right. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Community Connectivity Grant Committee. Today is Tuesday, May 11th, 4 p.m. And we are recording this meeting on WebEx for the Old Lyme YouTube channel. Members of the committee that are joining us are Frank Pappalardo, Jim Lampos, Eric Olson is here. Bonnie has not joined us, and at some point, Kurt Procherena is going to join us, and myself, Mary Jo Nozel. Right now, we have one member of the public on, Dmitry Tolchinsky, who would like to speak to us about his concerns when we get to public comment, which is coming up. But before I move on, is there anything anyone wants to say from the committee before we move on? Did everyone's wife, sister, mother have a good Mother's Day?
Just fine.
Good. I got a pair of AirPods that I have to figure out how to use, so mixed bag on my front. Very well-intended kids, though. All right, thanks. So the next on our agenda is public comment, and Dmitry asked to join us to speak and about his concerns. So normally in public comment, we don't have to respond to the public, but in this case, I felt like if the committee wants to, we certainly can. As a little background, Dmitry contacted me about a week and a half ago about his concerns with the new sidewalk and island, the safety enhancements approved by the DOT on their right-of-way in front of his property. And he came to the Board of Selectmen meeting a week ago, Monday, to talk about that. I know that our first selectman talked to our design engineer, as did I. Today, both Kurt Procherena, Carly Carbo from BSC Group, and myself went by to just make sure that the plans reflected what was absolutely necessary based on DOT's specifications and safety standards. And as you recall, they own quite a bit of right-of-way on Shore Road, and the plan calls for the sidewalk to go through. It has to be housed in something, so that is the service island, which would also house the stop sign that needs to go in at the east side of the island, and the ingress and egress curb to clean up the curbing for safety is the, I guess, westernmost part of that island. Dimitri's concern is that it makes it very difficult for parking. And to this point, he's had a lot of room utilizing the state right-of-way to park his vehicles, his customers' vehicles. And we looked at that today, and although he noted that he could park his vehicles behind his property, he was, concerned about access to the front of his property. He's used to having access for 5 large vehicles. So that's sort of the summary. Does the committee have any input before I turn it over to Dmitry?
Yeah, is it possible to put up the design plans so that we can see what he's talking about and maybe
Sure, I'll try that, and that's what I was playing with before. Can you guys see that?
No.
No.
Okay, that went well.
You did send it in an email recently, right?
Yep.
Well, you almost had it.
sure did. Well, so much for being prepared. I thought I was.
Well, if Kurt's gonna join us, he might be able to do that.
He certainly will. I rely so much on him for this
Hey, speaking of the devil, look who's,
Oh,
who just
yeah.
popped right out here.
Man.
Just in time,
Good
Kurt.
afternoon.
Kurt, excuse me. Kurt, I was trying to share my screen to absolutely total fail. I was trying to pull up the plans for Dmitry Tolchinsky's property on
Yes, I
Shore
can do
Road.
that. Yep,
Oh,
happy to do that.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Bear with me for a second. I'll just navigate to it.
Sure, show off. Hang on, Dimitri, we're getting there.
Okay, I'll wait.
Thank you.
Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
So here is Route 156, Swan Avenue, the proposed entrance and the other entrance over here. This is just the corner of the building that you could see here. This is the outline of the existing island,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the outline of the proposed island, and you can see this is the sidewalk, essentially running through the middle of the island.
That's great. Thank you.
And I'll leave this up. Just let me know when you want me to take it down.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we kind of went over the specific concerns that Dimitri had as a committee. Does the committee have any thoughts before we turn it over to Dimitri to talk to us?
I'd like to hear what he's proposing.
Okay. Jim or Eric?
Hello.
Same. I'd like to hear what Dimitri thinks, what direction we should take.
Okay. Eric, any thoughts before we turn it over?
No, Dimitri, go ahead.
Okay, great. All right,
Okay.
Dimitri.
Okay, I thank you, Mary Jo, very much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you, committee members, and every committee member. I would say working hard. I understand. I'm not against the sidewalk. What happening when 1988 my sign was approved by the state of Connecticut and the town, and an island was put and a sign was installed. And since this time, I used to have many people who live here longer know that I used to have a hardware store by name All-Lime Hardware for 10 years, from 1988 to 1998. And at that time, when parking was occupied, people got difficult with this island still at that time. And many people were crossing the island to get to the parking, especially on the east side of the parking. I have parking for 5 cars, including the parking number 5 on the east side, handicap parking. So when you have regular size cars. I mean regular size and vans and small trucks were coming. It was a hardware store. And when 3-4 cars occupying parkings, it's very difficult to get around the island, especially cars going west by 156. To make on the right side, I mean, of parking, especially for parking number 3, 4, and 5, handicap parking. When the car was going west, making right turn around the island, it needs bigger radius than we imagine. If we have a distance now from the island to the back of the cars parked on the parkings, we have about 15 feet. And now it's going to cut in half by island and by the sidewalk. We would have big problem to get cars occupying parking spaces, because when you need a radius, when car say 15 feet long, you need radius about 10 feet to make a 90-degree turn. There would be no possible to do it. What I'm asking is simple thing. Just make a sidewalk. It's okay. It's no problem. But don't block with the island the parkings that would be not possible to get to it. And one more thing. When I was permitted to have a sign and they put island, the state made restriction coming out from the parkings to the shore road, because when car gets out, another car cannot get in. In this moment, there could be an accident. So it should not be interest should be only from shore road, and you can see on the drawing that it shows interest and exit from the parking the same direction. I mean, from the same area to shore road. This is going to be an accident for sure. I'm asking, put the sidewalk, leave me possibility that people can come, make only one turn 90 degrees from shore road to the parkings. There would be no possible. I can tell you, I just put on a parking my two van, Ford and other van, and I put 2 cars, Buick Park Avenue and a Cruiser. And you can see I left only one parking available now for handicapped person. I can tell you, if you come going west, try to get to my parking that exists now on the end of the parking lot. Parking handicap. Try to get it. I would like you to do this. Try, please. And you'll see how difficult now is existing situation to get to this parking from shore road. And you'll understand what I'm talking about. It would be not possible to get. I'm asking not to block my parkings with the island. And I would appreciate if you will come and check it yourself. All members of the committee, you're welcome. Maybe if you drive home and by my building, just try to get to this parking. This is what I'm asking. Please consider the situation is going to limit usage of my property with no parkings in the front. Please, this is what I'm asking you to consider. And I appreciate you giving me time to talk. This is very nice. Thank you. Hello?
Hello?
Sorry. Thank you, Dimitri. And you happened to mention to me today when we were out there that you've also reached out to our state representative and state senator on this issue, correct?
Yes, I sent them a drawing that I gave you guys, selectman office, and I sent him my letter. I sent both to Paul Formica and our congressman, David. So I sent both of them. I heard only from David, secretary. She called me yesterday, and I do not know how they got in touch with DOT. I hope this is very simple thing. It's not we are saying that state owns this frontage, this right of way. Yes, but do they? Can they block your existing parking spaces? Bringing tighter area to the parking that cars cannot get in. It could be customers could have a small car and customer can have a small truck or van, whatever. It should be possible to get to the parking. So this is blockage for parking spaces. So I'm asking everyone who I can ask for help. I know you cannot sue the state. I know that my lawyers told me that don't even try, but consider just reasonable situation how you can help me not to have this blockage of my parkings.
Don't we have a entrance and exit on Swan Avenue extension to that area also?
That's
It
correct.
shouldn't be entrance from Swan Avenue. It should be outlet only.
Well, that's not my question, Dimitri, is to the engineer. I believe we have an entrance, we have a cut on Swan Avenue extension also, correct?
That
Swan
is
Avenue,
correct. And the Swan Avenue
that's
point
only
is not
because
striped as
because-
ingress or egress, so it's theoretically a two-way
It's a two
access point.
ways. So there's two access points to this area, one from Swan Avenue extension and one from Shore Road. Am I
That's
correct?
The road
Correct.
shouldn't be for getting out cars because this could be difficult and it could be just accident, and especially when car comes out and another car comes in. And the same thing from Swan Avenue. We cannot get car coming from Swan Avenue on the parking lot because some car can come out. This is one way should be in and another way out.
So you
And
could certainly delineate one as an entrance and the other as an exit.
We could
that's
look
right.
at that
That's right.
for sure, and if I hear Dimitri correctly, I think what he's asking for is that the access point on Shore Road be one way in, and the access point on Swan Avenue be one way out. I
That's
think
correct.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
hearing.
This way, state wanted me in 1988 when it was permitted, and the town should have some kind of drawings that were that time issued, and I don't have it in my possession, but it was very clear. Is as a matter of fact that that time I put sign in only and out only on Swan Avenue, and cars were backing up and broke the sign. This was on a corner on the end of the island. There was sign facing Shore Road, in only, and out only was sign staying on the island to get to the Swan Avenue side. So people were were parking cars on my parking. They were backing up into those signs, and I broke them. So this was only restriction from the state not to get in and out on one side. This is called
So if I understand this correctly, Dimitri, you want to enter on Shore Road and exit on Swan Avenue extension. Is that what I'm hearing?
This is only the secure way to do it, because otherwise it will be accident.
Well,
Like I'm
so,
saying,
yeah, so yes or no, yes or no? I want to make sure I understand it. You want to enter on Shore Road?
Yes.
Okay.
Only entrance on a Shore Road and out from Swan Avenue side.
Well,
But
I don't see that as being an issue for us. He could put an entrance and exit sign on whatever location he wants and whatever curb cut he wants.
yes, but island is on
Am
the
I
way.
correct, Kurt? Am I correct, Kurt, on that?
Yes, I see that that would have no effect on the sidewalk itself.
Mhm.
And which is really, first and foremost here. And I think that I'm speculating, but I don't think DOT would have an issue with that. And as long as the town is okay with the one-way exit onto Swan, we could even just put a stripe or an arrow, excuse me, indicating that, and then we would obviously modify the arrows that are at the. Essentially, we would just relocate one of the arrows to the other entrance, so we'd still have two arrows, but we would just relocate one of them. I think that's probably something that would be a very easy change as far as DOT is concerned. I definitely would want to get their nod of approval since we have an approved plan, and I don't want to, take anything for granted. But I think that could work from a functional standpoint.
Okay.
Okay, let me comment about that, because this is not going to solve the problem. The problem is the island, because when you get from Shore Road into the parking lot, you cannot make right turn and then left turn on the parking. You cannot do it because there would be between curb of the island and the back of the car, there would be no space. You're going to hit the car, the park already on the property. You cannot make. This is where the problem is. It's one thing that changing the arrow on a drawing, another thing leaving the blockage to the parkings. This is the main concern.
Hey, Kurt, I have a question.
It's not just arrow on a drawing changing directions. It's a blockage of the parking. Try to get to this parking going west on 156 and make a turn behind the cars parked right now, and get that parking is available now. I didn't put a car over there where that handicap parking. Try to get to this parking, make a going west and make a around the island, even now island, and you could see red marks on a paving where the sidewalk will be, and island will be 3 foot further to the building, closer to the building. Try to make this turn. It's not directions of the in and out. Its main concern is blockage to the parkings and not possibility to get to the parkings when 3-4 cars parked on a property in front property. You cannot back up, making left or right to get out because you're going to hit that island. You cannot do this physically. I mean, this is main concern, that island. If this is sidewalk, the driver can see if there are people walking around, wait until people pass, and they back up and get out. But blockage is island.
I think there are state standards, am I correct, Kurt, regarding driveway cuts on state roads? I know that when we reviewed the Best Way gas station across the street, they had to make a specific size driveway cut, and the larger driveway cuts were not allowed. Am I correct, Kurt?
Yeah, and it's variable depending on if it's one way, two way. It's also potentially variable depending on the specific configuration of the parking on the property. And for these older properties that are, essentially non-conforming, it can get tricky at times, but all of the work that was designed is about the safety of the pedestrians on the sidewalk. That's why the island is configured as such. If you notice, and I apologize, I stopped sharing. I'll re-share that.
Good luck.
It is it's to house the sidewalk. So as you can see here, we need something to house the sidewalk with the curbing, so there's a buffer between the pedestrian and motor vehicles. The only way to theoretically remove the island would be to remove the sidewalk, which is obviously not possible.
Hey, Kurt, I have a
But
quick.
sidewalk in front of across the street sidewalk in an area where people come, when cars come out and cars come in. Also, sidewalk is not going to be trouble to have. But safety, talking about safety, what's the safety going to do when cars cannot come in on the parking? So this is also a situation with trouble.
Jim, you were saying
Yeah.
something?
I just want to get a sense of, it looks like the driveway throat is pretty consistent with what Dimitri has now, right? How much did he lose in terms of the width of his entry, or his access from Shore Road?
Yep. From the end of the existing island, which is
Right.
right
Mhm.
here,
Yeah.
to the end of the new island,
Mm-hmm.
it's just about 5 feet, a little bit under 5 feet.
And what do we have?
Um,
20 feet, 24 feet for that entire driveway?
yeah, the driveway is about 22 feet wide, 2 11-foot lanes. And the reason that it got extended a little bit is because of, if you could see my cursor, we needed
Mhm.
to make sure that this radius, if you notice, there's a lot of consistency here,
Yeah.
which was key to cleaning up the radii. This one's a little bit longer to facilitate the right turnout. But as you can see, there's a very sharp radius here. We wanted to make these fairly, and the other thing that has a significant effect on this, we have to be able to accommodate our sidewalk ramp that essentially needs to have a parallel line. So we wanted to kind of maintain the same curb line, but then at this point, make sure that we were essentially parallel to the line here, but I'm sorry, perpendicular to the line here, but parallel because we need to come down with the ramp. So that kind of defined this radius, which put us at this point at the theoretical center of our ramp. That's where we ended up with a little bit of 5 extra feet. I
So
also
we
do
don't.
want to, oh, go ahead, Sergeant.
So we don't have a huge loss with the entry from Shore Road.
That's
And
correct.
what is it, about 7 feet, or is it more from the north edge of the existing island to the north edge of the proposed island?
This
Is that what
distance here,
5 feet plus 2? Is
that
that what that?
it's actually, it's 8 feet.
Mm-hmm.
This is a 3-foot to face of curb buffer between sidewalk and motor vehicle area. You'll also notice that, as I mentioned, this curb line was defined because we wanted to better define the entrance to Swan, because we wanted to make sure that the crosswalk was well defined between curb lines. And then, of course, the stop bar, we wanted to make sure that the stop bar, stop sign had a curb defining that right edge. So once we hit the stop bar where the hand is, we started to make our turn back in, targeting the existing curb. We're actually pulling that in just a little bit. And then because we were sensitive to the fact that we wanted to minimize as much room that got taken away. That's why we put this jog in here. If you're wondering why is this jog here, we originally had this going straight across, but we wanted to try to give as much room in here to the property owner. So we did jog this back in.
I guess that's what I'm sort of driving at in the end. Is there, with still staying in code, is there a way we can get a little bit more? Can we reduce that another foot? Can we give Dimitri another foot or a foot and a half or whatever for the part of the state way that he's using right now for driveway? Or is that 3-foot buffer required?
My suggestion and recommendation would be if we wanted to evaluate that is we should ask DOT.
I mean, keeping the sidewalk, keeping the island, but maybe buying another foot for Dimitri, which would help.
Yeah, we can certainly, if the committee wants me to, I am happy to put that inquiry into DOT.
Jim, I fully understand it and appreciate, if we can squeeze another foot or two out for that. But also opens up the door to 5 other businesses with a similar problem.
Yep.
And that's going to require a major rewrite of the design drawings, I would think.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but when the shovel's in the ground is not the time to start complaining about what the design is. And we've been working on this thing for over a year.
Well,
Yeah.
if I may say that I never was told or asked or somebody stopped at my property and talked to me. I found out when it already started. So this is not something that I came up with the idea that I knew it before. Say, for a year, design goes on. I didn't know nothing about that thing.
Dimitri, I will just take you up on that. You were sent letters. You've been sent flyers. And
yeah,
Frank
I received
Capilardo
letter.
actually walked door to door.
I received letter.
Public meetings. We've had a public meeting. Our meetings have been open to the public. So we have had a lot of opportunity for abutters to comment on this project. We have written it in various town publications. We have our own part of the town website. So there's been a great deal of outreach, but I certainly understand that until, you see the construction starting, sometimes it doesn't hit people to say something, but I am going to just tell you that there have been lots of opportunities to have some input in this.
Yeah, in some way, you're right, because I just was thinking that people would consider the parkings, especially. I didn't know the sidewalk. I could find out before that, but I found a little bit later. And I have a question about what's the difference that sidewalk will cross Swan Avenue with entrance of car in and out, and it cannot be continued through my property. What is the difference? Why should have island on my property when next after that Swan Avenue is sidewalk goes across and cannot be extended to my property? I cannot understand that.
Well, I don't think we can comment on the sidewalk across the street other than that was approved by the DOT because there were existing cuts there. But my question is understanding what Jim is saying about maybe opening that up another foot or two. Would it be helpful, Kurt, from a parking lot design standpoint, if rather opening up that entrance on Shore Road, if we shifted it to the east a foot or two instead? rather, I mean, when we start opening up things and making them bigger and changing the size, and I just see a black hole of everybody on that side of the street, you know, wanting a similar type of thing. So to
There is
get beyond
only,
that, if we shifted it over to the east a little bit, would that be helpful, do you think?
So Frank, do
there is
you
only
mean
my
over
property
in
affected.
this
No,
direction?
nobody else's property affected.
Dimitri, I'm asking the engineer the question. So let's get the answer first.
Frank, do you mean in this direction where I'm showing the cursor to slide it
Well,
this way a little bit?
slide it towards Swan Avenue. Just slide it over towards Swan Avenue a little bit.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought, okay. In my opinion, that would make the turning movements more difficult. Because ideally, and especially if we think about a one-way circulation, we'd like to be able to have vehicles come in at the end of the lot to give them as much flexibility as possible as they peel off to go into existing spaces. If we put it more near the center, then we could have an issue of vehicles coming into the property while it will increase the percentage of potential conflicts between vehicles coming into the property and vehicles doing their theoretical reverse 90-degree turning movement to exit. So having it towards this end, which is, let me just get the compass heading up. Yeah, heading it more towards the west end is actually more beneficial for as far as turning movements.
How about choking it down rather than opening it up? If we choked it down,
Yes,
so
if
it'd be more parking area to make the turn around once you're there. You know what I mean?
yeah, if we did the one way, we could make the entrance smaller. With a two-way entrance, we probably would not want to do that because you could have a conflict between opposing vehicles. But if we did make it one way, we could make the throat of the opening smaller.
I don't agree with that because you cannot, more you close the entrance, more difficult to get to the parkings. It's very simple to understand that, and you make it. You should move. You should open more. You open, easier to get to the parkings, because if there is no island, people can get to every parking one turn 90 degrees. If you close it more, then you have to make 190 degrees and then another opposite way 90 degrees. How can you do this if you close it more? This is actually what you are coming to, is making situation worse for me than better. You should open more, not closing more. This is completely opposite against nature. I guess if you drive a car, you understand. You make one turn right, and then left turn to the parking. It's a 90 degrees and 90 degrees turn. You don't have a space for that. I'm saying entrance from Shore Road, not because you would need to close it. Okay, we have one way. We can make opening less. This doesn't make sense.
Can I just add, if you are only going to make it a one-way, Dimitri, if we are able to do that with DOT's blessing, I don't understand why that would have the effect that you're describing. All we're doing then is kind of stretching out the plans that we have right now. And it would actually make the turn, the 90-degree turn from the entrance, that would give that car more turning radius into the parking. I don't agree with what you're saying.
I cannot understand how you make a smaller entrance and make it more turns. It doesn't work like that. And
You're giving more usable space in the parking lot for turning radius. Right now, you're chewing up parking lot turning radius space with a driveway cut. So if we reduce the size of the driveway cut, you're giving more usable space in the parking lot for turning around.
Right.
I think that's what you're saying, Mary Jo. Like, so that's what I'm looking at here too.
Yes.
I don't believe that personally. I don't believe the DOT is going to allow opening this thing up for a massive entry and exit similar to what you have now. The standards have been changed and they've been choking things down and making defined entrances and exits all the way up and down, state roads. Uh, like I said, we've got 4 other businesses on that street with a similar issue, or could have a similar issue. And I just see a slippery slope here if we start trying to make modifications.
the other buildings are located more away from the road. My building only the closest to the road. This is why I'm saying that other businesses are not affected. And please don't make opening smaller, because this what my complaint is what we have not enough opening to get to the parking. And now you're saying it's going to be better to make it smaller entrance, because not two ways get in and out. This is going to work even worse for me. So please don't do that.
Okay.
Hey, Kurt,
Yes.
do we have a or do you know when it's the big parking space that a standard vehicle, from that spot, a turning radius that's a safe? I don't know how to explain. I'm asking, like, parking space back out. What's the maximum amount from his building or the curb or whatever he's got from his building?
Yeah. If I understand your question, Eric. Yep.
Turn to go on in.
Yep.
Do we have a measurement for that?
A typical car needs about a 25-foot radius circle,
From
which we do have in this case. Yeah, if you envision like if a car is in a spot and then you do a reverse turning movement, so you create a 90-degree arc.
Mm-hmm.
So your vehicle, let's say, is pointing north, and then you want it to point east. You're going to do a 90-degree arc. The radius of that arc, typical for a regular vehicle, is about 25 feet. And in this case, we do
have that right
have
now
25
with the
feet.
drawings.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I don't see what these then. If
you
there is
consider
based on DOT standards of parking and being able to back out and exit onto Swan Avenue, I don't. But what's being lost then?
when you make a turn to the parking, the cars, you should consider the length of the car staying in front. So that is not going to be 25 feet. I mean, 25 feet, radius. It will be less, because the parking would be, some car stays on the parking. It takes about 15 feet. So it's not going to be 25 feet clear space behind the cars. This is what I'm saying.
I'm saying you need 25 feet behind the cars. You need 25 feet from the front of the vehicle when it's parked to what it needs to back out into.
Exactly, yes.
So Kurt is saying you have that per the plans. You have enough space to park cars, reverse, and head towards Swan Avenue without any issue. If I'm understanding.
Yeah, I don't have this 25 feet. The car comes to the parking lot. It stays. It's not coming very close, just touching the building. It should leave for people to get into the door and get around in front of the cars, and there should be about 6-7 feet before the front of the car parks to the building. And behind the car, it's not 25 feet left. It may be 10 feet or 12 feet.
That's about the right math though, Dimitri. If the average car, I think you had said, is 15 feet. And Kurt's saying you need 25. That's the math. That's
A radius of 25.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So that would make it.
It should be radius 25 feet behind the parked vehicle to make the turn.
I'm not sure you have that now.
Oh, well, like I said, come and park. Try getting to the parking lot now that with this island, that old island, that the new will be even closer to the building. So this is what I'm saying. I just I don't want situation get worse. You know, now it comes like I have enough parking spaces. Space behind the cars to get in and out. I don't believe so.
The radius does exist, Kurt. The radius does exist to get in and out in a safe manner based on state standards. Am I correct?
I think it does. I think we do have the 25, which is a good rule. You know, it's not exact. Vehicles obviously vary, but I think we have the 25. I also do want to add, just to kind of remind everybody, one of the reasons that we are trying to better define, frankly, all of the ingress and egress points is because we don't want vehicle turning movements, backing, and those kinds of things within those spaces, because if you look at the drawing, that's exactly where people will be walking as they traverse that driveway point. So the curbing is specifically designed so there is not vehicle maneuvering in that zone, because that's when people get hit, because you've got backing movements and these pedestrians have an assumption of safe travel between sidewalk ramp to sidewalk ramp. So that's a really key point, that theoretically, yes, you could open up this entryway and create more void space for vehicle movements, but that's exactly what we're trying to eliminate with formalizing the ingress and egress points. Because the wide open, as we sometimes call them, no man's land entrances and exits are when people get hit, because it's undefined and vehicles sort of have free reign to maneuver into that pedestrian envelope. And we want to specifically avoid that.
Hey, Kurt, can I get a sense of how big that space is? It looks like from the top, the north side of his existing parking to his property line is maybe about 30 feet, 32 feet or so.
In here, Jim?
Yeah, that space in there, or more. Yeah, I guess that's where his parking starts. Yes, that may be even less than 30 feet. I'm not sure.
Yeah, if it's in line with the edge of the building, so in other words, if we follow this line straight out,
Okay.
it's up.
Right.
It's just over 20 feet.
Okay. And then how about on the east side of the building? Looks like there's a lot more.
Yeah, on that side, we are probably close to 27 to 28, close to 30 feet.
Okay.
30 feet approximately.
So we're going between 20 and 30 feet in front of his property, in front of his building for parking. And how much of the state right of way would he be using with the new plan? from the state line down to the island?
Right now,
For the proposed
we would
island?
be utilizing about 12 feet of the state's property.
Okay, so he's going between 32 feet of usable room to about 42 feet of usable room, right? Or
Yeah,
40
so this, where
So
my
they-
cursor is, that's about 12
Okay.
feet of state property.
So it's about 12 feet of state property that he would be using for parking, or at least turning radius. And then of his own property, we have between 20 and 30 feet. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Are there any other comments from the committee? So just in summary, it appears that we're following DOT standards, that these plans have been DOT approved, that any change would require a stop of the project while we got DOT's input. That the turning radii are sufficient for normal vehicle turning, that we'll consider a one-way in and out for Dimitri. And if there is any way to give a foot or up to a foot, because I don't know that we'd have it much more than that, on the island, we would look into that. Am I correct? Did I forget anything?
Yeah, I would say either increase or decrease the size of the cot by a foot or two, whatever makes sense. But that's about it. I mean, we're already 12 feet into the state right of way, regardless of parking area. I mean, I certainly understand that it's been historically used for parking and turnaround, but we kept the island as tight as possible around the sidewalk to still give it that structure that's required, that safety structure.
Right. So,
but the only thing we could do is make some adjustments in the cut if possible, and if not possible, then I think we still maintain a usable parking lot. Maybe not as convenient as it's been in the past, but still usable.
Any other comments?
No, I don't have any. I think you summarized it pretty well, Mary Jo.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Frank. Jim, any comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, all right. Kurt, any last thought?
No, I'm good. Happy to
Okay.
answer any questions from the committee.
Okay. Dimitri, any last words on this?
Well, I would appreciate everything you guys will do for this matter, and just try to make it a little bit better, but not worse. I'm asking whatever you can do. I appreciate. I understand situation, and I appreciate what you're gonna do something better than it was. This is what my wish is.
Okay.
And I thank you very much all for your time, and I will wait whatever comes. But please do not reduce opening from this was, because parking number 1 and 2 very easy to get, but other three parkings would be more difficult to get, and we'll see what's going to happen. I don't know. I thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dimitri.
Thank you, Dimitri.
Okay. You take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
I hang up. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your thoughtful consideration of his concerns. I do especially feel after what we kind of experienced today, which we'll get into, is it's really, really, really important to have equity amongst the businesses, as Frank mentioned a few times. We're doing, I think we've been good listeners. I think we have tried to share information, gave people lots of opportunity. And I think we're trying to keep the plans within the DOT specs, which are for safety and for access and to make everything look neat and clean and be an upgrade to the whole look of the gateway. So I guess on that front, Kurt, if I could be so bold as to ask you and Carly, if you just take a look once again at your details to see if there is any give on that that won't make it look make it unsafe or make it look unbalanced or make it be less secure for the sidewalk, and get back to us.
Yep, we can certainly do that. We'll take care of that tomorrow, and we'll send out an email. We'll kind of brainstorm about options. We won't contact DOT until we send you some of our thoughts, and we'll await your kind of feedback on it. But we'll have something to you tomorrow.
Okay, well, and I just want to make sure that the committee's okay with that, because we know that's design services during construction, and I just want to make sure that everyone else is on board with that use of your time. Is there anyone that disagrees?
I don't disagree, but I would not want to spend an inordinate amount of time on this, Kurt. It's a quick evaluation. If there's something that is possible, fine. If there's something that's not possible, that's it. We're done.
Okay, yeah, and it should be a pretty quick exercise, I think. It's, literally talking an hour between the two of us while working together.
Okay, let's appreciate that. Yes, Jim, sorry.
I think we can lay to rest the changing the driveway throat, the opening to Shore Road, because Dimitri doesn't want to see that reduced. So
right.
That would be, the only option pretty much. So I think we can all agree that the driveway is what it is.
Right.
And Kurt doesn't have to waste time on that.
Yeah. And it's very clear. I mean, I talked with him today. I said, you have parking behind your building. And he said he could park his vehicles in the back. So he recognizes he has a lot more space in the back for his big vans, but his big van can easily get into space 1 and 2, as he calls it. Space 3, he had his Crown Vic or whatever it was there quite easily. For a regular car, I mean, I know I could get in there, and I told him that today. The 5th parking spot, which he calls his handicapped spot, I don't believe it's to code anyway. So I don't think we are affecting his livelihood by instituting these safety parameters for Shore Road.
Well, the 5th parking spot, it looks like that's not especially affected because the existing island is pretty much where the proposed island is, at least on the north edge of that.
Right.
See what the sign is?
Yep.
I'm assuming we mean by parking spot 5, the spot closest to the east side.
That's correct.
Well, the existing island is right where the proposed island is at that parking spot. So,
yeah,
I don't think we're affecting it quite as much. And he can access that from Shore Road. That's an open cut on, Swan Avenue. That's an open cut Swan Avenue. So 5 is accessed from Swan, or can be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know he calls that handicap, but if it was really truly handicap, it would have to be redesigned.
But we can just call it parking spot 5. I mean, for these purposes.
Yep. And again, he does have parking behind his building too. Or on the Swan stuff. Okay. Shall we move on?
Please.
Okay. Construction update. Kurt had the biweekly construction update today with Martin Lavero. Kurt, do you have anything you want to add in particular on that, from that meeting?
Yeah, looking at our meeting notes, I can give a 30-second update if you'd like.
Perfect.
Okay, so Hartford Avenue, sidewalk is complete. Driveway aprons, both concrete and bituminous at back of sidewalk, are complete. The bituminous curb has been installed. The next step for the contractor is to install topsoil and sod between the curb and the sidewalk. And then he will begin to work on the reinforced turf for the driveways. He confirmed that the reinforcement material has arrived at his warehouse and they'll mobilize it to the site and begin that work hopefully this week. A couple of things that we noted when we're out there today is that, and we are going to pass this on to the contractor, we do want to make sure that residual bituminous material that is currently deposited in the area between the bituminous curb and the sidewalk is removed prior to the placement of topsoil, because that will hinder the growth of the grass, particularly the roots. There were a couple of areas where it looks as if the subcontractor that installed the bituminous curbing did a little bit of hand work, and essentially it was where they were transitioning to blend the bituminous curb into the curb ramps. We're going to have the contractor take a look at a couple of those areas just to make sure that they don't feel that there's too much bituminous material at the back of the, or I should say the inside of the curb. It will eventually be covered with topsoil, but again, we don't want to hinder the growth of the grass in there. Minor issue, but it's open. We might as well look at it now. There's two gravel driveways. If everybody recalls, one of the driveways, they will be bringing in some additional stone, but in principle right now, it looks good. It'll look even better with the additional stone placed on there. Mailboxes have been procured. Those will be going in probably over the next week. And these are the new mailboxes. If you recall, there's a combination of new mailboxes and existing mailboxes that didn't need to get replaced. So Hartford Avenue is pretty close. We took a walk today. We were pretty pleased with the way that the ramps came out. They're very clean looking. They're functional. They're safe. We were very happy with the way that the hydrant at the Easy Mart turned out. The contractor had a concern, but we had given that a lot of thought during the design, and it turned out beautifully. He followed our design to the letter, and it turned out exactly as we had planned. So it looks good. Those entrances have been cleaned up. Once that sod is in, it's going to look really nice, which is great. It was kind of nice. We actually saw somebody taking a walk today on the sidewalk, and it was great to see that. You look down the street, and it looks real nice, and it's going to look even better once that sod is in. They are essentially in the early stages of work out on Route 156 right now. They're working at the intersection of 156 and oh boy, I wanted to say Cottage. I've been staring at the map too long.
Cross.
Yes, Cross Lane. Thank you. So they're moving along pretty well in there. We just today we're there for a little while and just kind of watched them working. Things were going fine. They have a police detail that they said that they've secured for the work on Shore Road, which is great. So that was nice from a traffic control measure. DOT did make a visit to the project site because they are working out on Shore Road, and the contractor confirmed that all was well. DOT was okay with what they saw related to traffic patterns, work, etc. So that was wonderful to hear that DOT is okay with everything they're doing. So they're working from that direction, and then they will proceed eastward. And they indicated that once they get their system down, they should move along with a pretty high level of efficiency. So they felt, based on the meeting today, that they were on schedule, looking at that May 28th date. So that was good to hear. I know that one question has come up, the pricing on the decorative posts. That request got sent, oh boy, 2 weeks ago at least now. The contractor confirmed that he has reached out to the supplier, but there was a question related to the breakaway base. So I sent him some supplemental information today, and I had warned him about that because I know we had the same issue on the previous Hartford Avenue project. So I sent him some supplemental information today that I hope is helpful. He was reluctant to give us the pricing until he resolves that breakaway base issue. So I'm hoping we're going to get that in the next couple of days.
Kurt, don't we have one of those posts already spec'd into the project at Bocce?
We do.
So he should have the breakaway base information already in hand, or should have accounted for it on that particular post.
That is correct.
So my next question is, what's the problem?
And I hate to say it, but I'm not sure. I don't know. He did not have the pricing information. So
As a business owner, as I get very concerned when when this kind of thing happens. I mean, I want to make sure he's fully in tune with what's supposed to happen at Bocce. I would imagine it's just multiplied times 3 because it's the same pole. It's just what you put on top of it.
you are correct.
I would feel much more comfortable if somebody asked that question directly to the contractor. And Mary Jo, I don't know who would be the appropriate person to ask that question.
I mean, I am happy to ask the question if you like. I have no problem following up, my email that I sent him with the information today to, let him, he knows we were having a committee meeting tonight. He knows that we were going to pass on his response. So if it's okay with the committee, I'm more than happy to send him an email and express that the committee is extremely anxious to get that data, and was kind of wondering why we don't have that information already in hand.
Mary Jo, if you're talking, you're on mute.
My husband was emptying the dishwashers. I'm so sorry. Yeah, if you need me to also send a little note to him or call him after you talk with him, Kurt, I'll be happy to.
Okay, and I'll copy you on that email, Mary Jo. That way you'll know and have confirmation that it did go out.
Okay.
And that's why I copied you on the supplemental email today. I wanted you to be aware that the information was sent to him. So I'll do the same thing. In fact, I'll reply to that email that I sent him.
Okay. Do you happen to recall what B&L's cost was? Just or
I could actually. Let me see if I can put my hands on that really quick. I'm not sure if
Well, while you're doing that, just so Frank answers Frank's concern, based on Tim's math on the budget, which differs from mine a little bit, I've been estimating those poles come first. I mean, those have to be accounted for. So we know, based on our previous conversations, that those are a simple change order, and we will account for those.
Yeah, I think we're going to probably end up having to have the arithmetic discussion sooner rather than later, but let's get the real numbers in place before we have that discussion.
Yeah. We're in the buff. While Kurt's looking that up, that's part of the further grant utilization plans. I showed Kurt today where the boulders of the granite that Jim had shared with us are. He liked them very much. And if we do want to have some of those, especially the flat pieces brought over, we'll have to share that with the contractor to see how much it would cost for him to pull some of those pieces over or save them for us as we get closer to looking at our numbers. But those are really lovely. The other things that came up today, we had concerns with the trees, which I shared with you at the Nickerson property. When we got down to their property today, which is the family at Cross and 156, the trees had been removed with the exception of the crabapple. They saved the crabapple. There is a discussion whether we should maybe consider bringing some boulders, some attractive boulders to that site for them. Because as you guys saw, he has a safety concern of out of control drivers crisscrossing, making a bad turn and ending up in his property. Which today was the first day I'd heard of that. So one of the thoughts was, do we look into getting some boulders, or do we look at pricing out a DOT fence or guardrail for that area? And if so, obviously that would take care of his safety concerns. So I thought I'd ask the committee what their thoughts were on that so that we could get back to the Nickersons. I did try, this is the second time I tried to meet with them in person, but they weren't there. What do you guys think about that?
It'd be consistent. I think the rocks are probably the best bet and a whole lot less expensive than DOT guardrails.
You think so? Cheaper.
Don't we have boulders in town that we can use?
I'm sure we have boulders, but getting them there, I don't know how much that would be.
I've had them brought into my property across the street, and it was about $400 to do about 70 feet. This is a while ago, and I just wanted to chime in because I did send Mary Jo an email when I saw Paul Nickerson's message. He has a legitimate concern. Living up here on Shore Road, I've witnessed it with my own eyes. Guy drive into my neighbor's house across the street. Cop arrests him. The quote from the police officer was, "Just another drunk from the beach bars." And he plowed right into my neighbor's house. I know my other neighbor over here a few years ago also had a drunk driver in his yard. So when I built my house, whatever boulders came up out of my property ended up on the shore road side of my property, because it's something we can expect up here. People drive sometimes 65 miles an hour down the street. There's a lot of curb cuts, a lot of people pulling out, a lot of people are wasted in the summer driving, and they drive into people's houses. So Paul's not being dramatic, and I'm sure that's why he planted those trees. On the other hand, I mean, and this applies to Dimitri and it applies to Paul's property, it's applied to my properties along state roads, my business. The state does what it wants with its right of way whenever it wants. So you put something in the right of way, it's sort of at your peril. They've taken out my stuff, certainly. And I appreciate why Paul put the trees in. I would have done the same thing, but they're in the state right away. So it's kind of the state's right to do whatever they want. If we can help him out, if we can drop some boulders in there, and if that's what he wants, I would be in favor of that.
I like the rock idea. I think it looks natural as opposed to metal or even that thick timber wood guardrail that just, wouldn't look as nice. If we're going to put some rock down at the corner of Hartford Avenue, something along those lines, I don't have a problem with it being a safety issue. I didn't think of that, why the trees were there, but that's a good point. And I think we should try to make it safe because God forbid something happens now that the trees are down, now, it looks bad on the town's part, I think. So I think we should look into that.
Yep. Rocks.
Yeah. Jackie Miano, am I saying that right, Frank? Miano?
Yes. Right.
About 2 years ago, she shared with me that she has a huge amount of boulders in her property, and I went to look at it, and she certainly does. So they may not be as, they're not cracked open like the pretty ones on that property on shore, but they are immense, and she has a ton of them, and she wanted to give them to somebody. The town did not want them because I looked into it at the time, but we may be able to get some from Jackie's property also, which is not that too far. It really isn't too far from the area where you want them to end up.
Old Lyme is not going to run out of rocks anytime soon. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
And I just do want to mention for the committee's knowledge that the trees that were removed, and we actually confirmed this today in the field, were close enough to the proposed sidewalk such that constructing the sidewalk would have removed a significant portion of the tree's root mass to the point where the trees probably would not survive. Additionally, the concern when you do that is the tree tends to tip over. If you cut, in this case, about 50% of the root mass of the tree because they were close enough to the sidewalk that when they dig down, all those roots get cut. So in the interim where the tree will still, especially this time of year, tend to leaf out, it does become very unstable and it becomes imbalanced. So unfortunately, those trees did have to come out. We were able to save one tree that, although it is very close to the sidewalk, it's at the end of the sidewalk where we transition to the ramp to cross the road. So hopefully it will survive. But I just wanted to mention that, because it was sort of a practical issue. It would have been nice to save the trees, but they simply couldn't be saved.
And yeah, you're right. And thank you for adding that, Kurt. I mean, you could not even see any of the root ball when we got down there. I mean, they were just clearly right in where the sidewalk is going to be. So, but I have to give it to Addison, who's the foreman. He really tried. He looked at the situation, spoke to the homeowner before we got there, and he really did, I thought, a very, very nice job of at least being concerned and trying to save the trees if he could. So the one that we had talked about in March was the birch, and that just wouldn't have survived.
Yeah, it's if you look at the design plans, the two of the birches, the trunks themselves were in the actual sidewalk. They weren't close to the sidewalk, they were in the sidewalk. The three other trees, one of them was extremely close. One other one was close enough that it would lose most of its root mass, and then the last one was the one that we were able to save. Well, it was not removed. Time will tell if how the tree does.
Yeah. We tried. Okay, so Kurt, what do we need to do with you, with the design about the rocks? What do you need from the committee to?
Well,
Yeah.
there's a couple of things. And actually, is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes. I mean, I guess we should ask the owners too.
So here's the area, and I'll just blow it up a little bit. So as you can see, these were the trees that came out. You can see how close these two were actually in the sidewalk, and these are so close. You could see, and again, the root zone is about equal to the drip line of a tree. So you could see that about 50% of the roots were cut. And so anyway, the one issue with creating what I'll call a crash barrier or a vehicle barrier is that this is the DOT right-of-way line or the highway line. So I suspect that because rocks are not considered by DOT a viable traffic barrier because of the if a vehicle hits a rock, it's not designed to attenuate a crash like a metal beam rail is. So if rocks are proposed as an option, I suspect they would not be able to be placed within the highway line, or what we sometimes call the clear zone. If we are proposing something on DOT's property, I suspect DOT would say, we're okay with putting it in, but it has to be fully compliant with our standards for a vehicle barrier system. And I'm happy to have that conversation with DOT if you'd like.
We could put it in on the town, on the private property part, can't we?
That is correct. Absolutely.
And we don't need DOT's approval for that.
That's right.
Kurt, with your cursor, where is their property?
So here's the hydrant. That's a good kind of
Oh, yeah.
reference point for people. Here's their driveway. So here's the highway line back here.
Okay. So it
So
would be.
this is, I think this is a deck.
Mhm.
So in fact, if it's helpful, so the highway line is back here, approximately, about where my cursor is.
Got it.
So right there.
Yeah, that's helpful.
But I think then what we should do is then respond back to his email and just say, hey, this is what we discussed. This is what we're thinking. These rocks, we could do rocks or boulders, whatever, but it would have to be further back because of DOT regulations.
Mhm.
And see what they have to say about it before we
Yeah.
spend too much running around. They may not want that. Who knows, right? I think that's
Right. Right. And Kurt, then if we would end up with proposing a guardrail that could be on the DOT property then? I mean,
Yes, and the one caveat would be that because it would be on the DOT property, it would have to meet all of their and keep in mind their design standards for guardrail are very well defined. They have standard sheets because they're used so commonly, and it's all based on federal highway crash testing, etc. There's a few different configurations. There's different end treatments if folks have noticed, sometimes you see where the end of the guardrail tapers down, flush with the ground. In some cases, you see sort of the curled end. Sometimes you also see what we call a blunt end that actually has the black and yellow hatching on it. And each configuration is kind of specific for a certain design speed, roadway type, etc. So we could work with DOT if we chose to go that direction and find out exactly what they wanted. And that would almost be, they'd be able to tell us exactly what was needed in this instance, because it's such a common thing that is very well defined as far as the standards and those kinds of things.
Also very ugly.
Yeah.
They are
Absolutely
not,
nothing.
yeah,
And
they
not
are,
to enhance the entryway to the Soundview area. So I would certainly hope that the Nickersons would be amenable to some boulders on their property.
yeah,
That's-
metal beam rail is certainly not, it is a good example of something that is 100% utilitarian in its function.
Not aesthetically pleasing at all. So
At all.
hopefully we'll be able to get the Nickersons to buy off on the if safety, if you know, trees were going to provide a degree of safety, I would imagine some big boulders will provide a similar, if not better.
And, I would think he would want to, if, the trees were planted for safety primarily anyway, he might be planning to plant something himself.
Yeah.
On his own property. Okay, so it seems like there's consensus that I liked the way Eric put it, that we just respond and let him know that what our discussion was and what we're thinking of. The boulders on his property, we'll see how he feels about that. Alternatively, there's the DOT metal fence option on the state property. Everybody okay if I send him a note?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
I'll copy everybody. Okay. Thank you. Then moving right along to Teddy's. Teddy does want the Jersey barrier, as you know. Dan Levesque is supposed to get us the information on that today. But Ted is aware that this would be temporary while the construction's going on. But he requested today that instead of the grass buffer, that it be filled with stone. Is that correct, Kurt?
Yes.
Because he doesn't want any maintenance. He doesn't want to water out there. He understands why we need the buffer, but he doesn't want grass. So I have to bring that up to see if you all are all right with that before we do a change order on that, which I don't know how involved that would be, Kurt.
It's actually pretty simple. Again, we would have to get DOT's approval to make a change, but that's a phone call or an email. And then it's simply, by email, I just ask Dan, I just do a quick, very, very simple sketch, ask him for a price proposal to change from loam and seed to whatever type of rock we, choose. He'll do the quantity, and he would just submit the price proposal for the committee's consideration.
Who's going to pull all the
So-
weeds out of the rocks, Mary Jo? I think that personally, I'm not going to mow the lawn, but personally, mowing the grass, 4 or 5 times a year versus weeds and all the other crud that ends up in rocked areas, and it looks terrible. Debris gets in there, you can't rake it. You got to go and pick it out, and we find that on the side of the road up right now, you know, there's hundreds of nip bottles all over the place, and I can just see those being accumulated in the stones and being very difficult to peel out. And then the weeds that'll start growing up in there.
Mm-hmm.
I have that at my restaurant in Groton. Our property goes all the way to Route 1, but the state wanted a 20-foot right of way and made me put a sidewalk in. So it's actually my property, but the state sort of dictated what I did there. And so there's grass on both sides of the sidewalk along Route 1, but where it turns into our driveway, the sidewalk has gravel along the side. And that's per their design. That gravel's on the sidewalk constantly. And the mowing is a lot less maintenance for us than getting out there with a broom, you know, all the time and sweeping that gravel back off the sidewalk. Just my experience. But it's not a maintenance-free issue to put gravel in that little strip.
Gravel or stuff, it's certainly, I mean, we'll be picking up stones all over the place. I don't know. I'm not sure what Teddy's thinking of there.
Well, at one point he was saying, eventually I'm not sure. At one point he was saying he was going to improve his property. He was maybe going to put like a little fence so that, or maybe some planting so that you can eat outside and not see the road. Sort of like a, you know, kind of like a private dining experience on Shore Road for him. But so he's, you know, he's thinking out loud in some respects on how he can make the property better looking, but he did not want to have to take care of grass. All right, so if we decided that we would go per the current plan, would he be able to do stones at his discretion at some point if that's what he decided, or just not on our dime?
Well, it'd be on state property, state right of way.
Yeah.
If he, you know, did it, he'd do it at his own peril.
Yeah, right.
The state does come through and it does mow. It's right of way. So I'm not sure that Teddy would be on the hook for it, for the maintenance.
You're right. They do mowing on Shore Road.
Well, sorry about that. I guess at this point, at one way, we could just tell him that at this point, obviously, because as Kurt shared, we'd have to get DOT approval, and we're already moving on that corner. It almost would not benefit the project to change the plans at this point.
Based on the contractor's progress, I suspect they will be in front of his property potentially as early as the end of this week, because they're moving very quickly.
I would agree that, you know, it is what it is. If he wants to change it later on, you know.
At his own peril. Okay, I will get back to him on that. But he is going to get his temporary Jersey barriers. We just don't know how much they are. It sounds like Dan will have the information later today, but I will get back to you when I know that. Thank you, guys. Then we had a busy day today. The family then to the east of Rooney's that has the two properties that we had letters translated for.
Yeah.
Okay. So the couple was out there today, and the owner and his wife, or they're joint owners, I guess. She speaks English, and we were able to communicate. Her first concern was that her driveway is only 13 feet wide versus her neighbor's, which is 16 feet. And she wanted 16 feet, and we were able to share that the plans were drafted and approved based on what they already had. So if her neighbor had 16 feet to begin with, that's what we worked with, and she had 13 feet, and that's what we worked with. Then she wanted to change the driveway, the ingress and exit, to allow for additional parking, because the second home, the second property, the Brown house, she said there's 2 families live there, and they have at least 4 cars there. So I spent a great deal of time with her just saying, you know, this is DOT property, state property, not your property. She thought it was town and kept saying, no, it's the state property. Showed her where her property approximately began, which is in her shrubs that she planted, also partially on state property. And that it doesn't matter how many people live in the house for DOT standard. It's what is the safety requirements of the state parameters. So I would say we were out there with her a good half hour, and she had previously spoken with the foreman today. So they did get a lot of attention. She wanted me to call the state on her behalf, which I said I could not, and that we were trying to be equitable for everybody on that abutted Shore Road, and that I would get her the name of somebody to call if she chose to. That's the summary of our discussion. I don't believe that they were particularly happy, but just basically kept it saying that it was safety, and it was DOT state property, not town property.
I met with them personally, and so this is not the first time they heard this.
Correct? And as you recall, they had a letter translated for them.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So, Kurt, would you say that sums up the discussion?
Yeah, as Mary Jo indicated, we had a very long discussion, answered all their questions, and explained to them that you couldn't park across the proposed sidewalk. We showed them dimensionally where the sidewalk was going to go. We showed them where the DOT highway line existed. And in fact, they did have one vehicle parked in there, essentially in the little parking lot that they've created. And we sort of use that as an example of, you know, that vehicle is literally parked across where the sidewalk needs to go. And we cannot have a sidewalk for the same reasons really we were talking about earlier with Dimitri. We can't have a sidewalk that is simply flush with the road, and then have vehicles parked across it, forcing pedestrians to essentially walk behind vehicles and approach the travel lane of the road. It's just absolutely not a viable scenario. So we explained the driveways that they're getting, and explained to them that beyond the DOT line, they can do whatever they want with their property and you know, where they put vehicles and such. And really that's that we told them that that's all we can do. We can't eliminate the sidewalk so you can have a parking lot.
So I believe that she did understand us. I really do. Enough to know that there was nothing more we could do other than I would share with her a contact with the DOT that she personally could call. Any questions on that? Okay.
Nope.
All righty. Then the transportation center.
Before we move on, can we just a question on Shore Road?
Sure.
I don't recall, but 280 Shore Road, which is a couple of doors down from I think it might be right next door to that Brown house, the old Italian American Club. That does have a driveway cut on Shore Road. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking about that the other day. I don't remember having a discussion about it. It may just been one of those quick things.
Yeah, that's the white one with the, like the patio out front.
Well, that's the old, whatever you want to call it. I think it was the old Italian American Club at one point in time.
Is it the one with the boat?
No, it's the one to the
Oh.
east of that. The abandoned building. Used to be the Italian Social Club, was a restaurant at
Big
one
and
time.
bad in the building. It's on the corner of
Portland, this Portland Extension and Shore.
Okay, I'm
East
looking at that now. Yes, yes, there's an existing driveway cut if I'm looking at the right property, and that driveway cut remains. It just got cleaned up, similar to what we were talking about before, with some new curb returns to accommodate the sidewalk ramps, but that opening remains.
because I noticed it's for sale again. And
Oh.
yeah, I saw the sign.
I'm so disappointed. I love the. It's one of the few times I've gone to zoning to talk about a proposal and just been like, yes, this is terrific. Please approve this.
Yeah, and they go through zoning board of appeals for a site plan. So now it's up for sale. I don't think the site plan goes with the site, but if somebody
No.
did want to use that similar site plan, they probably would have an easier go of it, because it's already been approved once. But as long as there's still a driveway cut there, and that would probably be just to the east side of the building, I would think.
There's an existing cut right now, and I think it is on the eastern side. I don't think it's in the.
Yeah, and that's fine. I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose that in the discussion.
Kurt, can you pull that up by chance?
Yeah.
'Cause I know I can't.
Is it that property?
No, keep going to
That's the one I was thinking of. Sorry. Okay.
No,
That's
to the east of that.
There's Portland.
keep going.
Oh, to the east, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I'm going in the right direction. Okay.
That's it
Oh.
right there.
Right there.
Here, Kurt. What it looks like, Kurt, looks just like this right here.
Okay, so this is the property, I believe, then this is being eliminated. All it is
That
a
drive-
small, well, it's not even, it's just a small slab of bituminous that's only about 10 feet wide.
There should be a driveway cut for that property, because that property traditionally has always had a parking
See how
lot
small
on
it
it.
is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I don't know if it had been removed, but if you can see how, I mean, that's really tiny. That's just a little, I almost thought it was just an apron. I'm not even sure what it is, but yeah, that's just going away.
How else would they have gotten in there?
That property is landlocked?
Did they get in from Portland?
You can come in from Portland.
So they must have a
corner,
driveway
there's-
over here, maybe.
Portland.
There's no driveway cut in Portland.
Oh, there's no pictures down there. Could there be one,
That's another parcel.
Yeah, it's different.
oh, okay.
I'm
Not even sure what that is.
I can't imagine we forgot about that, but I think that, not allowing them a driveway cut onto Shore Road is a mistake on our part, and potentially devalues the property and the potential uses of the property.
We certainly did forget about it.
Yeah, typically if there's not an existing driveway, and I would not consider that an existing driveway, because clearly it's, I'm not sure what it is. The owner would be responsible, and they would have to obtain approval from DOT for a curb cut. I look at that as not currently a viable driveway. So by default, it would be speculative if we configured some sort of a driveway that may or may not meet the needs of what the property, is going to be. That's typically a site development kind of thing that goes along with the permitting process to approve the site, meaning we don't know where the parking is going to be. We don't know what configuration the property would have. So if we were to put in a curb cut, it would be speculative, and then we run the risk of it not being what's desired, and then it would just be undone anyway.
Well, there's a site plan for that property already. And the driveway is essentially where that little patch is that you see right there, that asphalt patch, it's essentially right in that location. I don't know what we could do at this point in time, but I would think that we don't want to devalue the property by having the potential buyers have to go through a whole process with DOT to get a driveway cut in there, since there's traditionally always been a driveway cut there.
Yeah, but is there even a part, like, it's all overgrown grass? So I kind of tend to side with Kurt on this, that I understand there's something or was something there, but what's there behind there to even turn into? We're going to have a road cut that cars could potentially turn into, and then to what? To the weeds or the grass or whatever's overgrown. Plus, if we missed it, we'd have to go back to DOT right now to get approval for this, correct, Kurt?
Yeah, because right now that would not be considered an existing driveway. So in a sense, and then the DOT would want to know potentially what is it, one way, is it two way? And we just can't answer those questions because the property right now is not developed. And that's why I say it's more akin to, once the property is developed, their engineer will define ingress, egress, and then they would take that along with their local town approval process and just go to DOT for the curb cut wherever they may want it to be.
Would they go through the sidewalk then potentially?
Yes, absolutely. They would just remove the section of sidewalk, create the ramps, almost like, well, no, there was no sidewalk there, but it's done all the time, as part of, property developments, that you've got a sidewalk along a vacant piece of land. I'm not saying this is vacant, but as an example, and then somebody wants to develop it, they just remove that segment of sidewalk, put in the compliant ramps and those kinds of things as part of their approval with DOT rights of way.
Gotcha.
I'll defer to the committee on that.
I think since the building's not viable and hasn't been viable for 40 years, that when it does get developed, that's sort of up to the person who develops the property. I mean, I was going to share, let's see if you can see this. I painted this in 2002. This is the driveway right here. It's just an abandoned car that was sitting in it. You can see behind it was just trees, weeds. There's no, and that was after the building had been abandoned for 20 years. So, and that was 20 years ago. So I think Kurt is right. There's nothing there right now. So we put in our sidewalk, and whoever develops the property does what they're going to do. They can go right ahead, and it's not a huge process,
And I agree. I agree with everybody on that front. I do also fear that if we put one in and they come in, they may want a different one, so they would end up with a couple of driveway cuts then. That may not be smart at this point either. So I would look at what's happened with some of the other properties. So,
Well, I just wanted to bring it up, but
it's a very good point, Frank. Thank you, because yeah, you're right. We just never discussed it before. I'm glad you brought it up, but I do think Kurt, I agree with Kurt. I agree with Eric and Jim too, that for now, this is smart to move forward, and let's hope it gets bought. And, we've obviously got contacts at DOT we could share with the owners to help them out if they need some help.
The building currently, it's got no water service, no septic, it's got no electricity. There's, it's not, it needs to be torn down. You can't really save it. So there's a lot more expenses that will be involved with that property than just creating a driveway. And who knows what it's going to look like.
There's that mini golf, Frank.
I'd love that. I want to have a rose farm there, make rose oil from it.
Ooh, tulips too, please.
There you go.
How about a pizza joint?
I think there's a lot of good pizza joints already in Old Lyme, so I wouldn't want to get in that game.
All right. Thank you, Frank. That was a good discussion. Okay. Update on the transportation center. Kurt's been working on the plans. He did have a discussion and with our zoning official. The survey that were required by the town to provide the A2 survey is extensive. That's a big piece of property, and the discussion is if that cost exceeds the amount of money we thought we would have to spend, what does the committee want to do? Do we want to consider just get the costs and we'll deal with it when we get there? Do we want to consider maybe having a scaled down transportation center, if you will, like postpone some of the landscaping until we have more money? But I think Kurt basically was saying that he felt that given our estimated budget of around 60 grand at this point, by some calculations, we may be expending more on the town's requirements and less than on what we want as a practical transportation center.
Are you saying that the survey is going to cost us $60,000?
No. That's about what our budget is.
Oh, okay.
No.
Depending on what arithmetic you use, that's what our budget is. But it could be significantly more than $60,000. And I think once we get to the point, have we got any preliminary designs, Kurt?
At this point, we don't have anything on paper. We have some sketches that we were speculating. The issue, and Mary Jo, do you want me to mention my conversation with Dan and
Yep.
my concerns?
Yep.
So, if you recall, we had talked about I was going to provide a schedule of values to kind of break out in more detail kind of how the money would be spent. And if you recall, my desire was to really be very diligent in the way that I sort of spent the available budget of 6,500 to make sure that we were expending as little as possible at every step. That way, if we had to stop for any reason, we didn't want to just spend all that money. So as part of putting together the schedule of values, if you will, schedule of expenditures, maybe, my survey manager came up with a cost estimate for the A2 survey of $3,800, which was explained to me and does make sense. It's a half-acre parcel, and because it's an A2 survey, that means it's a legal property boundary that does involve records research at the town hall, finding any existing monumentation, etc. That is a requirement of the town's permitting process. The town of Old Lyme, as the town entity, is not exempt from your local land use permitting requirements. So the town, as an applicant, if you will, has to comply with the same requirements that any other entity would. And not every town is like that. Some towns are, they exempt themselves from their own zoning regulations. So in this case, the A2 survey is part of the site plan application checklist that you have. So what I was hoping is that maybe there was an existing survey of the property because it was a town-owned parcel. Maybe there was already a survey on file. So I put a call into Dan Beret, and today, in fact, yesterday evening, I'm sorry, confirmed that, at least from his perspective, there is not an existing survey that the town has. So then I asked him, and I said, Dan, I may know the answer, but I have to ask the question, can we not do the A2 survey and still present this? And he said, well, the problem is it has to go before P&C, and there is the site plan checklist that is codified in the town's zoning regulations. And as the zoning official, I cannot tell you, no, I can just relieve you of, because it's part of the requirements, and the town is not exempt. He mentioned there are certain instances where the town can have some flexibility with certain things, but in this case, it's a pretty significant requirement of the town's zoning regulation. So I just wanted to make sure that there was no other options. So it sounds like the survey is required.
Yeah, I'm having a difficulty here. It's $3,800. It's not the end of the world. So what's the concern here?
So my concern was spending the $3,800, and that only leaves us $2,700 to go through the process. My worry is that we'll run out of money, and I didn't want to leave the committee. I didn't want to get to the point where I said, hey, we have finished the preliminary design, and the committee says, oh, we like it, we love the design, this is great, let's keep going. And then I say, well, I only have $400 left, so I'm sorry.
You're saying we can't present anything without the A2 survey. We can't present a preliminary design to zoning pending an A2 survey.
We can't apply for your local land use permit without the A2 survey. We could absolutely do a preliminary design, and what we would do is essentially just take the tax map and probably even an aerial photograph and kind of put something together. We could absolutely do that. But then when it comes to submitting a Town of Old Lyme land use application, we got to fill out the paperwork. We have to, and that's when suddenly the plans that you submit, you have a very defined checklist, and one of the requirements is an A2 survey of the property.
We have to get beyond the point. We have to get to the point where we have some hard numbers to look at to even determine what is viable and what isn't viable. So we have to get a design prepared so that we can actually put numbers against the design, then determine how we work the arithmetic for the original grant monies. So, I mean, whether we do the A2 now or later on, we still need the design, and we still need a cost estimate from the contractor. And that's got to come first. We can't do anything else until we get that information. Okay. Once we get that information, we can move forward with whether we, try to appropriate another $3,800 or whatever the delta is between what you have available and what the A2 costs. But we need to design, and we need to get the cost estimate based from the contractor. That's step number one.
Yeah, and my worry was spending the 3,800 and then, a couple of $1,000 to do the design work, and then everything stops. And then now I've spent your money on a survey that, well, now we're not going to build it. Does it have value? One option is we do the preliminary design to the point that we can get that initial cost estimate from Dan, but we don't do it with the A2 survey. We set that, we
Right.
kind of not use that money. That way, if Dan comes back and he says, oh yeah, this is going to be $100,000, and the committee says, well, we're done. Now you don't have this survey that sort of doesn't, I'm not saying it has no value, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I don't want to spend
think-
your money on,
We've got to get the design put together. We need to get a cost estimate from Dan. And maybe in the design, depending on how it comes out, we may want to even look at it as being a phased-in approach at some point in time, where we do, the first 60% of it on whatever funds we have available, and then it puts us in a position where it's still usable, functional, and
Yep.
semi-complete, and then we can add to that design later on. But we need to have a number from Dan. That's the bottom line. And with or without the A2, we do without the A2, just get a number from Dan. Then we can plug in the numbers from that point on.
So what I could actually do, I'll just throw this out a suggestion for the committee's consideration. I could develop what I'll call a base plan, and it would basically be based on an aerial photograph. And we have 2016 State of Connecticut orthophotography that actually, by the way, has 2-foot elevation contours based on LiDAR. I can take that, and that's in the public realm, create a base plan using that orthophotography coupled with the dimensional property lines taken from the town tax mapping, and I can get us pretty close. Using that as a base, I can then complete the preliminary design that shows the road, the sidewalk connection, where the bus shelter would go.
All the bells and whistles we would want to have done.
Yep, and get that to Dan for pricing. I could have that done in 1 week.
Okay, that sounds like exactly what we need.
Okay, I am happy to do that. And then if the pricing is favorable, then we could talk about the A2 survey, but bear in mind that can get done very quickly. It's just one lot. And theoretically, if Dan's pricing came back okay, in the meantime, we could even use that preliminary design for that initial feedback from DOT that we had talked about, that initial feedback from Ninetown Transit. So we're sort of paralleling some of these tasks.
I think that's great. I mean,
Okay.
we can't go any farther unless we get some numbers put attached to it.
Okay.
We can't even evaluate how much money we have available to us until we get numbers attached to it, because
Okay.
that's going to have to do with how the arithmetic and how the math is done. And when we actually have hard numbers, I think it's going to be a lot easier to make the proposal for utilizing the full $400,000 for our extras enhancements.
Okay, then I will get started on that immediately, and I'll have the mapping done this week. I'll have initial sketches done this week. I will plan on having something to send out to the committee by this time next Tuesday at the
Okay.
latest.
All right, then we can plan a special meeting to look at that then.
Sure,
I
yes.
also, after you shared with me today your concerns, Kurt, thought maybe I'd reach out. I actually sent a note to the WPCA to see if they had any survey stuff in their work that maybe Dan isn't aware of.
Yeah, anything is helpful.
Also, I would look at land records, because the town just bought that property not too long ago from the church. And I can't imagine that the town would have purchased that property without an A2 survey being done.
That was
and
my thought, Jim.
and
I
a
was
lot-
really kind of
Yeah.
surprised that Dan said there's no mapping.
but you won't find it in zoning. You'll find it as an attachment to the actual deed, and it'll be in land records and not in zoning records. So that would be my first thought, is to do a quick title search on the property, and that'll be easy because that's the last sale. So that'll be the first thing that turns up, and there, I would imagine there would have to be, as described in Exhibit A, with an A2 survey
Right?
attached.
That's usually how that
Yeah, the town couldn't have. I don't
happens.
think it could have bought it without a survey. And in any case, step two, I know Tim mentioned last week, and I saw it. I think I saw it in next year's budget. There is a budget for the surveying of town assets in Soundview. That's a town asset in Soundview.
Frank
So-
offered that up at the last meeting, maybe.
So, hey,
That's right. I mean, there may be a way of paying for that. If we're that close with that, if we're that tight for money, that might be what we have to do, but
Well, and don't forget, we still have to survey the rest of the assets, but let's see what's available to us.
right.
And what we would do if we were fortunate enough to actually put our hands on the A2 survey, we don't even necessarily need a digital copy of it. Now, the first thing we would do is find out, well, who did the survey and try to reach out to them and get the digital copy. Quite often, either, depending on how the services were procured, the town could own the digital files, or sometimes surveyors, as a courtesy to another surveyor, will give them their digital files. We've had situations where surveyors say, yeah, give me $500 and I'll send you the digital file. Fine. But even without the digital file, and we've done this before, we can scan the survey in, and then digitally we design on top of it. And I would run that by, if we went there, I would just run that by Dan Beret just to make sure that that would be acceptable, because it is an official A2 survey. For something like this, I don't see why that wouldn't be acceptable.
okay.
The work we're doing.
Mary
is
Jo,
pretty much.
should we discuss a special meeting next week?
I think that sounds like a good plan. And I know it's getting late, so I'm so sorry, guys. Thank you for
Who
your.
could we reach out to, Mary Jo? I know you reached out to WPCA. Would it be, the tax assessor, the finance director?
I think the town clerk.
Okay,
I think she would give me direction and see if there's anything in there. And if we need to get a title search, that's an expense, but we'll go from there. But maybe she's got something on the, like Jim suggested, maybe there's something in the library there that, and I'll look for that. I'll be happy to.
oh, that'd be, boy, if that existed, and you're right, Jim, I don't think I've ever seen a property transfer. That's why I was so surprised that didn't have a survey. You want to know what you're buying.
Yeah, I
It
don't
is
think we need to do a title search. You'd just be going to land records and
That's what I'm
And just-
thinking.
That's
pulling
right.
that deed.
Leave the
Let's-
meeting here pretty soon here, so.
Yep. Let's hope. So next week, today is the 11th, so we're looking at
18th.
the Tuesday, the 18th. How does that look for everybody?
That's fine.
Okay. Works for me.
It's okay.
Thank you, guys. Frank, how does that work for you?
That's good. I'm good.
All right. I will get us set up for another Zoom meeting here, or WebEx meeting for next Tuesday. Thank you. Thank you, Kurt, for joining us today and telling us, what your concerns were. I really appreciate that, because, I mean, as soon as we get this, we can make some plans going forward.
Yeah, thank you for your feedback. I was worried about it. My whole thing is I don't want to spend your money needlessly. I was really concerned about that.
Yep.
So I think we have a good plan in place to move forward, and
And hopefully we'll find just what you need.
that would be wonderful.
Okay. We'll work that issue this week.
All right. Thank you very much for the feedback.
Thank
That was very
you.
helpful.
Thank you for you and Carly coming down today. We got a lot done. So I really appreciate it. It was a pleasant surprise. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Does anybody have any next steps they want to bring up or want to move along here and approve minutes? You guys want to approve minutes?
Approve minutes.
Okay, I knew that you wanted to secretly. We have 3 sets of minutes, April 13th, April 20th, and April 27th. Does anyone have any questions with any of those, or can we approve them as a group?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Jim, it's all yours.
I'll make the motion. We approve them as a group.
Okay,
I'll second it.
thank you, Frank. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstention? Any nays? All right, we're going to have a meeting next week. Our next regular meeting is June 8th. If there's any last comments, I just want to thank you all for your time and effort and discussion, and thank you for listening to Dimitri too. Appreciate that. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Eric.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Great to see
Have a
everybody.
good night, everybody.
Bye.
See you all. Bye
Good
now.
night.